Hello, comic ladies and comic men, and welcome to another episode of the Yoshi Cast. I'm Yoshi. Today is Tuesday, September 18th, 2018, and this is episode 18 of Bag and Board. Yoshi! Thanks for joining me, everybody, as we go over the comics I picked up this week at my comic book shop. Not everything is new. Most of the stuff I've got is old, and I'm really looking forward to going over that with you. Also, at the end of the video, I've got a rant planned up about multiple comic book covers. I've added up to here with variant comic book covers. I'm also going to answer a user question I got on Twitter. But let's go ahead and jump into this. So the first book I want to talk to you about this week is The Amazing Spider-Man 248. I read this, and I want to talk to you about it. If you don't want to be spoiled on this storyline, just skip ahead to the next book. But let's take a ridiculous amount of care at bagging and boarding this as I tell you about it. So, The Amazing Spider-Man 248 is a book that got my attention on Reddit a few months ago. There was a thread I was following that was just talking about Spider-Man and Spider-Man covers, and it bled over to one user talking about this cover and how it was his favorite Spider-Man story was in this book, and that was backed up by a bunch of other people agreeing it was one of the better, if not one of their, in their opinions, one of the best Spider-Man stories they've ever read. And so that always piqued my interest, and I think they also were talking about how they were kind of shocked that a story this good was still this kind of dirt cheap. As you can see on the cover there, I didn't pay more than $6 for this thing. It's also not in the greatest condition. It's seen better days. This was, I even found like a Cheeto crumb in it. Like the person who read this before was just really enjoying it, just using their book and having a good time with it, which is good. That's what comics are for, you know. Let me just talk about the story. I mean, the first story is a fight with Thunderball. At first blush, the more I think of it, it's not. But at first blush, the first half of this book is a story fighting with Thunderball, and it's kind of a throwaway story. Here's Thunderball. He's got some power. As I try to recall this, please forgive me, but he got his powers from some sort of Asgardian magic or power or blessing, but his Thunderball and his crowbar here are not only amazing, but they charge him. They make him the supervillain that he is. And the fight is kind of in the woods. I think it's somewhere off of New Jersey, and it slowly makes its way, and Spider-Man's doing his quips. He's good. He's funny in this. It's classic Spider-Man. The fight eventually makes its way to an interstate, and it's barely even shown here, the fight. And at the end of the story, Spider-Man subdues Thunderball, and the takeaway is that everybody there, the police that show up, the reporters that show up, because you don't cross an interstate having a superhero fight and not get the attention of media, and everybody's pissed at him. Like this is the worst traffic jam ever in New York. Like, this is the worst. Parents are complaining that they're going to miss their kids' recital. Husbands are complaining they're not going to get home to their wives. It's a nightmare. And Spider-Man's like, geez, I just saved everyone, the city, from a supervillain. And he just kind of walks away, unthanked and depressed. And that's not why I got this book, so I raced through this story to get to the other story. So we're going to talk about this again in a minute. But here's the story, and again, it's a good story. If you wanna read this for yourself and don't want to be spoiled, skip this section of the video, please. Here we have Spider-Man visiting a little kid. I think he's an early teenager. And every few pages, you get these newspaper clippings, a story written by Jacob Conover. And he's talking about this kid. This kid is like the biggest Spider-Man fan. He has an impressive scrapbooks, multiple scrapbooks he keeps in a footlocker of all of Spider-Man's accomplishments and sightings. He has the very first news clipping that Spider-Man was ever mentioned in the newspaper. He has projector film of newscasts, as many as he's been able to get his hands on of Spider-Man's appearances on TV. And in the book they talk about one, and they kind of agree. This is probably the first time Spider-Man was mentioned. Spider-Man acknowledges this, and the kid's like, I've searched everywhere. This seems to be the first time you were ever mentioned in media, and Spider-Man agrees. So it's really cool. It's interesting. I wonder how this kid was able to convince news stations in the, let's say it was the 80s. When was this published? I've got it. It's got to be the 80s. 1984. So to get that kind of footage in 1984 was no easy task for this kid. And they talk about Star Wars, and they're just, they're two kids enjoying each other's company. And you got to remember this. Spider-Man is a kid. Spider-Man's not an old guy. He's young. He's not much older than the kid in this story. And the kid has questions, as a super fan would, like, how does your webbing work? And he goes through and he explains that. You get another news clipping where it explains a little bit more of the kid. And in this particular page, the kid was like, Spider-Man, how did this all start? How did this all happen? And he explains that somebody very close to him died because he was too selfish to prevent a crime or to stop a crime a few months earlier. And he's referring to Uncle Ben getting shot by just a common criminal that a couple months earlier. If you're familiar with the Spider-Man story, if he had just acted anything, if he had not been, self-absorbed in his own interests, Uncle Ben never would have died months later. The kid, like any super fan, he's got bullets from a shootout at a bank that were pulled from a wall by his best friend. That's what this is. And he gets ready to put the kid to bed. And we're learning more about Tim here in these news articles. And he's like, I gotta go. It was nice knowing you. He turns out the light to let the kid go back to sleep. And Spider-Man gets to the window, and the kid goes, will you just tell me one thing, Spider-Man? Who are you? And Spider-Man's like, I can't tell you that. And the kid is like, but I'm not going to tell anybody, and you could trust me. I'm your biggest fan. I'll keep your biggest secret. And he takes off his mask and he says, I'm Peter Parker. And the kid goes, you're just a kid. And then Peter explains, I take my own pictures of Spider-Man and I sell them to the Daily Bugle, and I work there and all that stuff. And the kid knows about J. Jonah Jameson and his hatred for Spider-Man. And he's like, dude, that's like the biggest I gotcha troll thing you could do. Like, you work for the guy and you're the guy he hates the most and he has no idea. And, here they're like, I'll always keep your secret. We'll be best buddies forever. You can always trust me. And this is just ripping Spider-Man apart. And he doesn't have a whole lot to say. He's like, we will. We are always friends till the end. I know you'll keep my secret to the end. And I gotta go. I got a bunch of stuff to do. As politely as he can. You gotta remember, this is a kid. Spider-Man is a kid, not much older than this kid. And he's just trying to get out of the room. And the last bit of the article explains that this kid that Spider-Man visited, his name is Timothy, is dying of cancer. He's only got a couple of months to live. And the end of this article explains that and just says, the reporter's like, I really do hope the kid gets his one last dying wish to meet Spider-Man. And you don't realize he's dying until the last panel. And holy shit, I mean, you can see the weight on Peter Parker's face. You can see the weight through his mask. Like, here's a kid trying to console another kid who's gonna die. And the kid who's dying is acting like he's not dying. He obviously knows he's dying, and he's not acting like he's gonna die. This is some real heavy shit for a comic book, man. Like, this is a great issue. This is one of those issues that make you realize, like, this is the core of Spider-Man. This is the core of Peter Parker. A super nice guy. And just trying to do what's right and you know, be a superhero and be an Avenger and be an adult when he's not there yet. He's not ready, and he's doing all this stuff. And after I finished this story, I read it yesterday, just for context here. I read it yesterday. The Thunderball story just started to, like, why is this important? Why is this in here? Like, here's Spider-Man. He does this good deed. He saves New York from Thunderball, and he gets shit on for doing it. Like, not a single person gave him a pat on the back and said, "That a boy," or "Good job." They all bitched at him for the inconvenience he caused. So here's a guy who went from, that's his, like, average day, average event as Spider-Man. He takes out a bad guy. He doesn't get thanked for it. It's kind of rough. And then he's asked through the newspaper to go visit this dying kid and give him his last wish. And I'm sure off the gut, just off the hip, like, it's like, okay, I'll just go see this kid. Like, he knows why I'm coming. He knows about the article. Kid doesn't allude to the fact he's dying. Spider-Man doesn't allude to the fact he's dying. And the kid is just acting like he's not, which I kind of get. You know, you can't focus on that. You have to go each day. Like, each day is a gift. Each day is awesome. I'm not going to focus on the fact I'm passing away. And here's this kid just we'll always be pals. You know you can trust me because I'm going to take this Peter Parker secret to the grave with me. It's just heavy shit. Like, I did not expect that going into this book. I'm super glad I found that Reddit article that said to read this. And it has, since I read it yesterday, it's just kind of brewed and steeped and evolved in my head. I had a chance to process it because, you know, this was a story written in the 80s. So you kind of have to look at it through those eyes, which is fine. That, for me, is a lot of the fun of reading these older books. So it's not like, I imagine if I had read this in the 80s, I would have read it and it would have been, ugh. Okay. That was a good issue, rough issue. I'm ready for the next one. I feel like I'm really processing and absorbing the hell out of it now. So yeah, Amazing Spider-Man 248. I think this is a book to have in your collection. It's really good. The cover is not my favorite cover ever. It is not a pretty cover. You got the kid in question, and you also have Thunderball and Spider-Man fighting out in the background. I paid $6 for this. It's not in great condition. There's a crease on the cover. The pages are way off white. Way off white. There's dings in the thing. I don't know how much of that contributed to the $6. I don't know what a 9.0 of this book would go for, but I can't imagine it's, I don't know. I mean, what I remember on that Reddit article was it wasn't an expensive book. So if you get a chance, grab this. It's definitely within your collection. It's a solid Spider-Man story. It's the core. It's heavy. It's good. Go check it out, guys. Next up, this is a book that came out this week. It's a reprint. It's a True Believers $1 Luke Cage Hero for Hire, a reprint of issue number 1. You can't go wrong with these. It's $1. You get a key issue. Like, you should read this, especially if you're a fan of the Netflix show. Know where the guy came from. Know where the character came from. And that's what this is. Let's take a ridiculous amount of care bagging and boarding this sucker. So here we go. We've got Luke Cage Hero for Hire, issue number 1. This is the True Believers reprints that they're doing. This was $1. You can't beat it for $1. A key issue for $1, guys. I'm going to snag these up every time I see them. All right, this next book, I have to thank Twitter user Dogcades for this. Dogcades picked up issue number 1 of Thanos Legacy, just like I did last week. but I didn't get this cover. I didn't see this cover on the shelf. And I even tweeted back at him, I'm like, dude, that's such a beautiful cover. It's a bummer I didn't see it in the store. So when I went back this last Wednesday, look what I found in the alternate covers bin from the previous week. This is a gorgeous cover. That's why I picked it up. I want to thank Dogcades for telling me about this so I could keep my eye open for it. And I'm going to take a ridiculous amount of care here bagging and boarding this sucker. Okay, everybody, we got Thanos Legacy #1, one of the variant covers I didn't see the week it came out. I found it last week. Thank you, Dogcades, for pointing it out to me and just making me, when I got there, I specifically looked for it and found it, shockingly enough. It's a beautiful cover. I'm glad I got it. And even pops better in the Mylar, everybody. All right, so these next books. Some Punisher books I have found that go into my collection of trying to read all the way from his inception to issue 100 of Punisher proper. That's going to be Punisher POV 1 of 4. I've got all 4 covers, and we're going to bag all 4 covers. Let's go ahead and do that right now. So here we are, bagged and boarded with ridiculous care. Punisher POV issues 1 through 4. And None Shall Live. I did check, and unfortunately, POV does stand for point of view. That's what the subtitle is for this series. And these are beautiful covers. I am truly, truly digging on them. Painted covers, I guess we could say. This one's special guest star Nick Fury of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Who Will Be King of the Hill? This has got a very Doom cover to it, very Doom-esque. Issue number 4 here seems to be fighting some sort of buggy alien monster. Be interesting to see what these are about. Again, I want to get together a little bit more of the collection before I start reading it, because I'm missing some of those very early and expensive issues. So yeah, that is Punisher POV issues 1 through 4. So I promised everybody a rant about variant comic book covers, and I'm going to answer a question I got from Twitter. I am going to go back and talk a little bit more about Rick and Morty versus Dungeons and Dragons. This is driving me nuts. I'm going to try to cut to some older footage here, but as you saw in the back of the first issue of Rick and Morty versus Dungeons and Dragons, there's a ton of covers for this thing. Enough that it kind of just, I'm not even bothering trying to collect them all. I will say this, back, especially when Transformers Regeneration 1 came out, I loved that hunt of trying to find each and every cover that's out there. That is a very fun hunt to do. Each issue generally had 3 covers. Occasionally there was 4, and I think there was 1 issue that had 5, and it's 20 books in that series. And that was fun to hunt down. I enjoyed that. I enjoy that obtainable goal. Some of those covers only had 100 made, so that makes it even more difficult, but it's still a fun hunt, and I believe I have every cover. I have to double check. I'm going through my books right now. I'm reorganizing everything, but I believe I have successfully picked up 1 of every cover, and I'm stoked about that. Rick and Morty versus Dungeons and Dragons. This is going to be a 4 or 5 issue run with at least issue number 1 having a ton of covers. This is ridiculous. Last week, after I uploaded my video, IDW Publishing, which is one of the co-publishers behind Rick and Morty vs. Dungeons & Dragons, released their super special, expensive 3D cover variant. This was not available the week the book came out. And that's gripe number 1. These variant covers are not all available from day number 1. Drives me nuts. Gripe number 2. Just a day or 2 after IDW announced that, remember that one book I got last week, the Rick and Morty red cover? Foil cover that I thought was gorgeous and beautiful, and I love it. And that was the one I was hunting for, like specifically, before I realized there was tons of covers, and I'd already bought a few. So they released a variant with that red cover that's a 3D book of the same thing. So this is KRS Comics that did this. They're a comic book brick and mortar store somewhere out there, but they have an online presence, and they commissioned through IDW Publishing and Oni Press to have this variant cover made, the red holofoil cover, available day 1. That book sold out day 1. They had no problems getting rid of it. Then they waited days. They waited another week and change. And then they said, oh, we've got these with the red foot, but it's in 3D. Now you can get this. Double dip much? Like, I don't, this just drives me nuts. Like, how is a kid, anybody for that matter, who's a super Rick and Morty fan, who's trying to collect all the books and all the covers, ever going to obtain this? Yeah, there's probably somebody out there that's going to meet this goal, and more power to you. But this is ridiculous. Like, I remember being a teenager going to the grocery store, and Batman the Animated Adventure comic book came out, and I bought issue number 1, and I went back every month, and I bought every issue after that, which means I have the first appearance of Harley Quinn. Everybody knows this book is hot as hell right now. Like, it's going for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars. It's a hot book, and I got lucky. I love that cartoon. I loved reading the comic book. And I was one of those kids that would read the book once and put it away and never opened it again. And I got lucky. I have that, you know. But now, like, comics have a lot going for them and a lot going against them. You've got comics where maybe the story is epic, like Watchmen, and you just want to have that story. And you can do that because there's not 1,000 freaking covers of the thing. Maybe Rick and Morty versus Dungeons and Dragons at the end is going to suck big time. But maybe there's 2 covers in there that everybody loves because the art is just fantastic, and that makes it worth a couple $100 or something. Like, the average comic consumer stands no chance of pulling this off. Unless, I guess, you're a super... Like, what is the point? Like, I had fun doing the Regeneration 1 Transformers thing and collecting all those variants. That was fun. But I'm a hardcore Transformers fan, and there wasn't 20 plus variant covers for any single issue. It was obtainable. It took me years. I enjoyed that hunt, but man, I do not envy anybody trying to put this together. It's frustrating. It's frustrating as somebody who is like so looking forward to Rick and Morty versus Dungeons and Dragons, who really enjoyed the first issue, and with IDW or with KRS Comics doing this, and me realizing there are more books, there are more issue 1s with variant covers of Rick and Morty versus Dungeons and Dragons that weren't listed in the back of the book that are yet to come out. Not all of the ones on the back of that book have come out yet either. We don't know, I'm not even sure where they're coming from. Like, I've really tried hard to figure this out. I don't know where they're coming from. The blank, character sheet variant I was telling you guys I wanted, that was released at a Comic-Con in Florida, I believe. Like, I didn't realize that until after the Comic-Con was over. Like, I'm online trying to find these, and this is not an easy deal. And now with KRS Comics doing this, like, this is putting a bad taste in my mouth in what could be an epic comic story, something that I would really enjoy. When I go to pick up issue 2, I'm really going to have a hard time enjoying it as much as any other book I would get, especially when I was younger. Like, it's going to be really hard because I know that, you know, maybe the 2, 3, 4, 5 covers my comic book store gets of issues 2, that's probably not all of them. They're probably not all going to be listed in the back anymore. And what if my favorite one isn't listed there? Or what if my favorite one isn't brought in by my comic shop? What if my favorite one doesn't come out for months later at some con where they only released 100 of them? Like, this sucks. This sucks as a fan. This hurts. I don't know what else to say. I'd like to know what you guys think about it. Like, calm me down, show me the bright side of this, or agree with me, but this really sucks. Like, I don't know. Like, I know, you know, and here's another take. Let me be this. Like, I know there's a ton of covers for Thanos Legacy. I know this. I think everybody knows this. I know my comic book shop didn't get half of them. I guess I don't care. Like, I got this because there's a small tie-in with Cosmic Ghost Rider, and this was a pretty cover. But I don't care to collect all of these. I just wanted the tie-in story. I don't know, maybe there are people who think of Dungeons and Dragons versus... Rick and Morty versus Dungeons and Dragons the same way. But that irks me. I mean... I don't know. Maybe I'm a hypocrite for not caring about Thanos Legacy having a ton of covers, but caring about Rick and Morty versus Dungeons and Dragons having a ton of covers. because originally wanted to get all of those covers because I didn't think it would be a Herculean task. I thought it would be like the Transformers run. Like there might be one out there, maybe two out there I'd have to really fight for. And that's fun, you know, like it's nice to not just get it all in one fell swoop and be done. I enjoy the hunt, but man, that sucks. That really, really sucks. And I am going to quit whining and ranting and complaining, and I'm going to go to my Twitter question. So the question on Twitter comes from Robin Hunt at Robinus_Prime. Dude, I'm looking for some advice on the best way to order my comics in the shelving. Currently, I order my comics based on title with newest at the front. However, my Transformers comics are kept separate and generally are in reading order, which isn't consistent. Great question, Robin. Thanks for asking. The way I would do it and the way I do it is I put my physical comics in reading order. This is kind of a pain in the butt for the Punisher run, and if somebody's trying to do what I'm doing, where they want like the Punisher run and the Amazing Spider-Man run, you're gonna have to make compromises there on which books go where. I'll tell you what I do. So, for example, the biggest run I've got is putting this Punisher run, which consists of Spider-Man and a bunch of other books. So everything's in reading order right now. I haven't had any conflicts. Then I have a Google spreadsheet, and I'll link to a blank version of that spreadsheet down below so you can steal it and use the template for yourselves. But the spreadsheet just has every book I own. And it has every book, it's got the authors, it's got the artists, but importantly, it also lists which box and which drawer of my comic book filing cabinet it's in. You know, the one you see at the beginning of each of these Bag and Board episodes? It tells me which box it's located in on what shelf. So, if I'm looking for anything in this Excel sheet, or I'm sorry, in this Google spreadsheet, I can sort by any number of means. I can sort by issue number. I can sort by comic book title. I can sort by artist. I can sort by blank variants. I got a bunch of options for sorting and looking at it at a glance. I also do keep tabs at the bottom of the spreadsheet with reading order. So like with the Punisher run, I've got all my Punisher books listed there, as well as the ones I am missing that I need in this run. But that's in reading order, and I don't mess with that. I don't change the order of that at all. That is from Spider-Man 129 on through to Punisher 100. That is every Punisher book I have and or am looking for, and where they're located if I have them in my comic book setup, my physical comic book setup. So that's what I do, Robin. I answered you on Twitter already, but I thought that was a great question and I wanted to share it here. Thank you guys for watching this week. I really appreciate it. If you have any questions about what I use to bag and board my books, you can find all that information down below. I'll include a link to a template of that Google spreadsheet I use. Knock yourselves out, take it, use it, share it, and yeah, anger with variants this week. Thanks for listening, guys. I'll catch you in the next one. Later.